it's time. It's time for Dodger baseball.
I haven't heard that wonderful announcement in years. The legendary Vin Scully retired back in 2016, the first of many signs of terror to follow in the coming years. I haven't kept up with Dodger baseball or any baseball in years. Make no mistake, familia, I bleed Dodger blue. It's kind of remarkable this jersey still fits. I've had it since I was like 12 and I'm 86 now. Anyway, this is a fandom that goes back, all the way back to the womb. My parents, in particular my mother, are big baseball fans. And you might be asking, but being a Latina/Hispanic, isn't football the sport you guys are all obsessed with? While yes, for many folks from Latin America and the rest of the world actually, football is a religion. It's not really a thing here in the US of A. While sports like basketball and football are very popular and cool, baseball is what I grew up with. America's pastime, baseball. The most American of all sports. So American, in fact, that Congress investigated the steroid controversy of the early 2000s. And Latinos love baseball. It's a style, it's a culture, it's a statement, at least out here in East LA. You might be asking, how does this super American sport have so many Latino diehards? If you've ever seen a baseball roster, you'll see that Latinos have been representing since before the color barrier was broken. We have been playing and changing the game for well over a century now. Famously, some of the best all-time players are from the islands in the Caribbean, places like Cuba and La República Dominicana. Baseball should be popular only with those folks in that part of the world. But it's far more popular than that. And Latinos have been keeping baseball alive for decades. The love of baseball might not have started with the Dodgers, but it was cemented with the Dodgers. Even though my blood type is Dodger blue negative, I have beef. And today, we're gonna talk about it. A mini history of the Dodgers, why Latinos love them, and my feud. Grab a beer and some nachos while I complain for a really long time. It'll feel like a real game you'd watch with your parents as they yell at the team while they lose. Memories. Wait, no, I am that person now. Oh, Neta uno, a super duper brief Doyer history. Is a history of the Dodgers necessary? For the purposes of my complaining, probably not, but I like a good history lesson. Plus, the history of the Dodgers is pretty interesting. Everything started in 1890 when the Brooklyn baseball team, whose nickname was the Bridegrooms, made their major league debut. Brooklyn had a lot of trolleys folks had to dodge when they were walking down the street. So the Brooklyn Bridegrooms got the new nickname, the Trolley Dodgers. That was shortened to the Dodgers shortly after their first season in the National League. The Dodgers feud with the Giants started all the way back in the 1900s when both teams were on the East Coast, playing each other in early championship games. In 1947, the Dodgers broke the color barrier and signed Jackie Robinson. Jackie had one heck of a rookie year with 125 runs and an RBI of 297, plus 29 bases stolen. In 1950, Walter O'Malley became the president and majority owner of the Dodgers franchise. The 1950s was the first golden age of Dodger baseball, with players like Sandy Koufax, Duke Snider, Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb, and Pee Wee Reese. They were known as the Boys of Summer. In 1957, O'Malley decided to move the franchise to Los Angeles. The team played their first game as the Los Angeles Dodgers on April 18, 1958, at the Los Angeles Coliseum. On April 10, 1962, the Dodgers played their first game at the beautiful Dodger Stadium located on Chavez Ravine. We'll chat more about Chavez Ravine in the next section. The 1970s was another amazing decade for the Dodgers, with winning season after winning season. Tommy Lasorda, rest in peace, became the Dodgers manager in 1976. The 1980s was possibly the last great decade for Dodger baseball, and we'll get to that in a minute. 1981 saw the debut of the phenomenon that was Fernando Valenzuela. Again, more on that in the next section. Looking over the Dodger history of the 80s, I'm reading names of players I grew up hearing about. Steve Garvey, Earl Hershiser, Mike Scioscia, Steve Sachs, Pedro Guerrero, and of course, the last great Dodger World Series moment with Kirk Gibson. The 1990s was when it all started to go downhill. 1990 marked the 100th anniversary of the Dodgers team in Major League Baseball. More names from my childhood: Eric Karros, Mike Piazza, Hideo Nomo, Raul Mondesi. At a game once, we tormented left fielder Mondesi with tortas. Good times. In 1998, the O'Malleys sold the team to the Fox Group, and that sale made the Dodgers officially the most successful baseball organization in the 20th century. In 1999, Tommy Lasorda and Vin Scully celebrated their 50th year with the organization. The attendance at Dodger Stadium also passed the 100 million mark in 1999, with yearly attendance at least over 2 million people. The 2000s was the decade where the Dodgers were at their lowest point in their franchise history, with Jim Tracy as their manager. Yikes. Arguably the worst manager. Well, it's debatable. It's a shame because they had some really solid players at that time: Eric Gagne, Paul Lo Duca, and Sean Green. I still have a Sean Green growth poster and a Dodgers lunchbox somewhere. And while I was looking for my jersey, I found some Dodgers playing cards. In 2004, Frank McCourt bought the team. Again, arguably the worst owner in Major League Baseball. At least that guy won a bunch of games. In 2008, Yankees legend Joe Torre became the manager, and they did have a good season that year. In 2011, the Dodgers almost went bankrupt. Double yikes. In 2012, Guggenheim Baseball Management bought the team for about $2 billion. After 32 years, the Dodgers won the 2020 World Series against Tampa Bay, despite the terrible manager that is Dave Roberts. The Dodgers have really good players right now. We've got the best pitcher in the game, Clayton Kershaw, good players like Corey Seager, Max Muncy, Ginger Jesus, Justin Turner, and hug magnet Cody Bellinger. Cody is such a funny white boy name. My favorite thing about the Dodgers is that roasting them is built into the fabric of the team. Back when they were in Brooklyn, they were known as dem bums. Like in many situations, if a fan says it, it's a term of endearment. If a rival says it, it's not cool. But any hardcore Dodger fan knows part of being a fan is crapping on the team for little to no reason. It's kind of hilarious if you think about it. The more hardcore a fan you are, the more you crap on the team. It's just one of the laws of physics. Let's move on to see how and why Latinos love the Dodgers. Neta dos. Latinos and los Doyers. Hispanic Latinos go back, way back with baseball. The first Hispanic baseball player in the major leagues was Esteban Enrique Bellan, back in 1871. Since many Latino Hispanic folks didn't, and still don't, look ethnic or dark, they could get away with playing ball in the major leagues before the color barrier was broken in 1945. Like with many American things, Latino Hispanic folks have been there helping build baseball since the beginning. Latino Hispanic folks and the Dodgers have a sordid history. Famously, the three neighborhoods that made up what is now Chavez Ravine, the folks who lived there were kicked out of that area. For a deep dive, I'll link Vox's history down below. It's not a great look for the Dodgers. The people in those neighborhoods were not kicked out to build Dodger Stadium, like it's commonly believed, but that land was leased to O'Malley so he could build the stadium. It's an ugly history, but it does go to prove how capitalism is not friendly at all to people of color. but that's a topic for another video. The Dodgers and the Latino Hispanic community's relationship started in
Fernando Valenzuela. If you have a sombrero, throw it to the sky.
We'll get to that. The relationship started much earlier than that, actually. As soon as the Dodgers moved to La Ciudad de Nuestra Señora La Reina de Los Ángeles back in 1957, Walter O'Malley, being a very smart businessman, knew he had to work to court the biggest population in LA, Hispanic Latinos. I say O'Malley was a smart businessman because he could have, like so many do, ignored the minority group and gotten by just pandering and marketing to the white people. Like in many cases, when business people are prejudiced, they lose out on a lot of money. Since the Dodgers had broken the color barrier over a decade before they got to Los Angeles, I'm sure it's safe to say that O'Malley wasn't an old-timey racist person. Again, as a smart businessman, the only color he cared about was green. Smart. In 1958, the Dodgers took another huge step in diversity by hiring journalist René Cárdenas and being the first Major League Baseball team to air their games in Spanish. Cárdenas trained the Spanish voice of the team that a lot of us think about now, Jaime
y despídala con un beso.
Jarrín. Jaime took over the full-time Spanish broadcast in 1962 and is now in his 63rd season with the team. For many older LA Spanish-speaking Dodger fans, Jaime has been the voice of the team for decades. Mother has told me when she got into baseball back in the 70s, it was mostly because of how amazing an announcer Jaime is. For those who think baseball is boring, even they have to admit that legends like Vince Scully and Jaime Jarrín have a special talent for bringing games to life. The first announcer I heard wasn't Vin, it was Jaime. Jaime tells the story of when Walter O'Malley told him, "We need a Mexican Sandy Koufax." Opening day 1981, a portly unknown player took the mound and created the phenomena known as Fernando Mania. The LA Times is doing a whole series about Fernando Valenzuela, and I'll link to that below too. It's great. For the majority of Dodger fans in the Latino Hispanic community, Fernando Mania is why they are fans. The brilliant combination of having Fernando pitching and Jaime calling the games made for a jam-packed Dodger Stadium. Plus, every single radio and television tuned into the game. The Dodgers having Hispanic Latinos become hardcore fans would guarantee the team practically printing money. Latino Hispanics are super loyal. Once you've got us, we won't betray you. We'll raise our kids to be big fans of yours too. We'll buy all the merchandise, and Dodger Stadium will never be less than half full, ever. Even the times when the team is losing really badly or has terrible management. Baseball is all about the stats. Let's moneyball this. Neta 3, Dodger stats. In the 131 years the Dodgers have been a team, they have only won 7 World Series. That is shockingly low for a team that has such fanfare and is well known across the world. The Dodgers have been in the World Series 21 times, with 34 appearances in total in the postseason. For context, the pinstripe brown zoo New York Yankees have won 27 World Series. Series. The next team to win the most titles are the St. Louis Cardinals at 11. My beloved Dodgers are not a great team. I was there in the late 90s and 2000s. When the team had the worst manager and the worst owner. Those were lean years that separated the real fans from the bandwagoner fans. I don't gatekeep like that, and we'll talk about that in the next section. I bring up the stats because the Dodgers are in a unique position where they are not a winning team, but have the devoted fan base as if they were. Since 1973, the Dodgers have had yearly attendance of over 2 million people. Most most years, it's well over 3 million people. Since 1979, the home game attendance hasn't gone below 35,000. Full capacity at the stadium is 50,000. Maximum capacity is 56,000. If the stadium keeps attendance at 50,000, the average attendance above 35,000 is impressive for not a winning team. Since 2004, the average attendance is above 43,000. The Dodgers won the World Series last year in the hellscape that was 2020. Before that, the last winning season they had was back in 1988. I know Red Sox fans and Cubs fans are like, first time, huh? My point is, naturally, a team like the Dodgers shouldn't have the dedicated fans they do, but they seem to have lucked out in having the hardcore fans that seem to be getting more hardcore as the years go by. These hardcore fans are Latino Hispanic and have kept the Dodgers alive and thriving for decades. Hispanic Latinos kept the team flourishing during 1997 through 2008, where the Dodgers were the worst team in the league. I know, I was there. You might be thinking, what's the big deal? Most places have bad sports teams, and the fan base is even more dedicated. Yeah, that's true, but this is Los Angeles. Other places have nothing more than their sports teams. LA has more and better things to dedicate time and money to. Yet, the Dodgers are experiencing success as if they were a better team or they lived in a place that had no other pastime. Which brings me, finally, to my feud. Neta Cuatro, my feud. Feud is probably a strong word. A feud implies that the Dodgers and I are actively at war. They have no idea who I am, and since no one watches this channel, no one really cares about my opinions. But let me get into my beef and why I won't give the Dodgers franchise my devoted fandom like when I was a teenager back in the 1940s. Since 2013, the Dodgers have been doing really well as a team. They've been to the postseason and the World Series every single year for the past 7 years. That is great, and would be better if regular fans could watch the games. They put the games behind a paywall. Since 2013, the only way to watch the games is to pay AT&T or MLB TV or YouTube or ESPN Plus. Those services will have you pay from $65 to $85 a month. If you want to go to the game, be ready to shell out at least $50 a ticket. Even in the pavilions. Even in the very top section, you have to climb Everest to get to. I remember when those tickets were like $15 a ticket. Yeah, I know. Okay, boomer. The Dodgers are completely shutting out the fan base that has kept them kicking since they got here back in 1958. The rich folks have not had the devotion the poor folks have. When you go to a game, you'll notice that a lot of the seats for folks with money are empty. But you know where it's never empty? The formerly cheap seats. And I get the feeling the Dodgers have turned from the team that was for everyone to the team that doesn't want to rub elbows with the impoverished poors. Most of the impoverished poors are Latino Hispanic, the group of folks we have established that have kept the lights on for during the last couple of decades. We have been excluded.
From now on, you were excluded from the surf and turf night. You were excluded from ravioli night.
And it sucks. I'm sure this is true with sports in general, but I can only speak about my experience with baseball. Baseball has been one of those rare things that are predominantly male, but isn't gate kept. I'm a female who likes action movies, comic books, and rock music. If I'm around dudes with like a Justice League t-shirt on, those dudes will then ask me to name every single character when they debuted in Detective Comics, who was the original character, and who is currently donning the cowl. Most women can tell you how they get harassed when they wear a band t-shirt. Name 5 songs that aren't Stairway to Heaven from Zeppelin. Zeppelin's overrated. Baseball, though, is is not this way. Some jerks will see you wearing a cap or a jersey and will tell you that your team sucks. But fans of the team will give you a thumbs up or talk to you about the best game they saw back when they were kids. Baseball has been fun and inclusive. There is no gatekeeping. There is no shaming for being a casual fan. There is no other agenda than just enjoying the game with people. Even if you like going just because of the food, there is a place for you too. Nothing matters outside of supporting your team. It's hard to support the team when the number one requirement is paying through the nose just to watch a game. It's a shame, too. My younger years were less than privileged. When you're poor, brown, and from the hood, there are very few things that we could enjoy. One of those things was a ball game. A family trip to the ballpark used to be affordable, even for extremely less fortunate me. Those were super fun trips. I even got to go with a good friend of mine when we were in high school. Shout out to Isela. Remember when you got a pitcher in trouble because you were distracting him? Good times. I just think about those kids who want to go to a game and can't because they're too poor, further rubbing in their less fortunate situation in their face. Since it seems that if you want to be a fan and watch a game, you'll have to pay a lot. I can't support a team that favors money over fans, especially the fans that have had their butts in seats even when the team didn't merit the attendance.
They don't want me, I don't want them.
Conclusion. So does this mean that I'm not a Dodger fan anymore? No. I'm still a fan and my blood type is still Dodger Blue negative. I'll still watch games of the week if the Dodgers are playing. I'll still watch the All-Star game and cheer for my team. I'll still watch them in the postseason. I'll still hurrah and cringe at the embarrassing plays they make during the World Series. If by some twist of fate I have kids, you better bet your sweet nalgas they are gonna be Dodger fans too. The baby daddy can pay for those games and such. I'll still trash talk Giants and Yankees fans. Once in college, one of my friends, shout out to Luis, was wearing a Giants cap and I turned to him and asked why he hates America. All I do, and everyone should do, is trash talk other teams. It's all in good fun. Acknowledge good players and teams, enjoy the game, debate who is hotter if Steve Garvey or Jim Palmer, keep cheering for your team, and have fun if you can afford to.